Welcome to Service, the podcast at Eaton Hotel in Washington, D.C. I'm Rock Harper, and I'm joined by Gideon Coleman, the K-Street coach.
Hi.
We asked the question, can restaurants provide a culture that enforces both culinary excellence and personal dignity? That's the goal of the show.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking a lot, more and more, over the past few weeks about media.
Yep.
And the role it plays in like promoting and supporting healthy kitchens. And today, we have an expert, a legend in the field of media. I'm very sure that after today, we'll all be a little smarter about how media works and how restaurants can navigate it a little bit. I think we'll just be a little smarter. We have the incomparable Stephanie Ganze in the building.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm going to read a couple nice things about you. Stephanie Ganze currently is the Director of Talent and Culture at Cookology. She oversees the programming and events at the Recreational Cooking School. For 8 years, she was the dining editor and restaurant critic at Northern Virginia Magazine, covering all aspects of food and drink and the dining scene. Previous jobs included political pollster, nonprofit manager promoting progressive workplace practices. We'll have to talk about that.
Yeah.
Farmers market manager and diner waitress. You got it all in there. I love it. Originally from South Jersey.
Cherry Hill.
There it is. Cherry Hill. What up? Stephanie has lived in the D.C. area for 2 decades and will not leave the house without her nails painted. We talked about that a little bit.
They're orange today.
Yes. Now that she isn't required to eat at restaurants multiple nights a week, she's excited to take cooking classes and play in the kitchen with her 2 young children. Stephanie Ganze, welcome to the show.
Hi, good afternoon.
Thank you for being here. I think we're going to talk about, this was inspired by Gideon. You were inspired by the Washingtonian releasing their 100 very best, I believe they call the list.
Mm-hmm.
100 very best.
You know it.
With the what's her name? The pastry chef from Kith and Kin. Paola
Bellas, I think.
Belez. So shouts to her for making the cover.
Amazing stuff, by the way.
Yes. Haven't had any sweets over there, but I hear she's killing it. Yes. So you were inspired by the conversation or the list, and we started talking about many things. So we wanted to have a conversation. Now, Stephanie, who is recently removed from Northern Virginia Magazine, we had a conversation. We talked about maybe a week or two ago about how it ain't all that glamorous. Or as we sort of civilians think, we're like, oh, you're eating out.
On the corporate card.
Right, on the corporate card, you just get to eat great food and take all your friends with you. And you peel back the curtain a little bit and you say, it's nice, but it's not as glorious as you all think many times. It's work. It's work at the end of the day.
Good job.
So we want to talk about it. Gideon, what do we want to talk about first? One of the questions I had was the difference between food writing and critiquing. I think sometimes we as chefs and restaurant folks, we sort of lump it all in there together. And I think I know the difference, but before you spur the conversation, can you talk about, I guess, the difference between, what a restaurant critic is and a food writer?
Sure. So the classic definition of a restaurant critic would be someone, usually anonymous, that's changing, but someone walking into the restaurant unannounced, even if they're not anonymous, they don't make reservations in their own name. So that element of the surprise for the kitchen where they can't be going to the store real quick because they know you're coming, or like 3 weeks in advance prepping. So the element of surprise, when you're there, not telling anyone who you are, so you have the same treatment as anyone else, paying with cash or not the credit card with your name usually, and usually going 3 times would be industry standard. Some people go way more, but 3 is kind of that getting a feel of the place. There's usually a round of fact-checking afterwards. Lots of people interview the chef or the owner of the restaurant to get more information, and it's put together as not necessarily right, the listing of this food was good, this food was bad, right? That's a Yelp review. A real critic would take into consideration a lot more. So what does this restaurant say about food today? How does the chef How does her background impact what she's cooking? What does this restaurant say in the larger food scene? Kind of like a bigger story to tell. Just like how when a movie comes out, it's not just the Joker, right? It's like, are we looking at white male rage?
Right.
I saw an SNL skit.
Right.
So that's the critique, right? Or how it's been traditionally. Lots of people are doing interesting things with that format, but that's how it goes usually. And then the other side of food writing is feature stories. So Q&As, doing a profile of someone in the industry, a listicle, the top 5 places to get roasted turnips this winter. Trying to make turnips happen.
Success? I saw that on your Instagram. Was it successful? Did you make the fries?
I have not made turnip fries yet. My
Okay.
house is like seething. They're just like, just sweet potatoes are fine.
Yeah.
You can use other seasonal ingredients. Stop with the turnips.
Right.
The parsnip soup did not go over well.
Nuh-uh. With the kids?
Yeah, I thought it was delicious. Well, my 4-year-old,
It's 4-year-old.
she's a 4-year-old, and I've taught her this. Can I go on a tangent?
You can go
Okay.
and you can do whatever you like.
You have a mic.
Yeah.
This is cool.
Yeah.
So there's this Pim, that chef. Oh, I forget her last name. Pim. She's in San Francisco, and she talked about this Thai phrase. Was I talking to you about this?
I don't think so.
Okay. So there's this phrase that they say. It's like, the food is not to my taste, or I don't know how to eat this.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of putting down the food, right? I don't like this. This is yucky, or insulting the cook. It's, I don't know how to eat this. I don't know how to appreciate it, which means in the moment, maybe I don't like this parsnip soup, but I could try it again and I might like it. And so I've taught her this phrase, it's not to my taste. So she's not like,
Love that.
yeah, but she says it all the time now. So she'll
Can I
say,
add an element
Yeah,
to it,
please.
actually? Because I have a...
You got little. You
I've got a
cooking
son
for the
who's
little.
almost
Yeah.
5, and one of the things that I've done with him is I've explained to him that he has taste buds, he has a palate, and it will evolve over time. So when he tastes something that he doesn't like, he actively thinks about how one day he will.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I try to tell her, you like, we'll try it again another time. She's also, so she used to go out with me to eat a lot. I mean, she was from birth, literally, like, breastfeeding her while I'm, like, looking at the menu, to up until I left, when her and I would go on dates and my husband would stay at home with the baby.
Oh, that's cool.
It was great. So she would eat out at, Clarity in Vienna, truffle shaved on the pot. I mean, these beautiful handmade noodles. Like, seaweed salad, sashimi. She eats everything.
Wow. Did you ever include her? Did her critique ever make it into your work?
I'm trying to think if I usually.
When she's 4.
Yeah, she's 4. Sometimes I would allude that maybe she was there, but I tried to make my presence not my personal. Right, like, because I'm eating out with, like, 2 kids and a husband, and it's crazy, and so I'm trying not that
filtering
not
that.
to impact the
Yeah.
review. I don't want people to think I'm distracted, anyway.
I got you. Yeah.
But she's having a really hard time. She's used to the restaurant life where we'd say, okay, I'm looking, these are a couple of things that I want to order, and she would just be able to eat off my plate and my husband's plate and the 3 side dishes we order and then the bread basket. And now at home, it's like, we're eating parsnip soup tonight and there's no choices, and she is not feeling it. She's having a harder time adjusting to home cooking than I think anyone else is.
You
Sounds
spoiled
like
her.
her palate is based on having choice rather than any
Yes,
particular
because
thing.
she's a great eater. She can eat Ethiopian and Afghan
It's like, what is this
food.
one thing in front of me?
Right. And I put in, like,
Make it happen,
sizzled
Mom. Give me-
chickpeas in the soup too for texture, and she loves chickpeas. This is not to my taste.
That's all right. So what's the phrase?
This is not to my. Oh, the real. I can look up what the
Okay.
actual Thai translation is, but it's not. It's. I've saved it.
This is not
Oh.
moving my soul.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know how to eat this, but it doesn't sound, when you say it in English, it'll be like, I don't know how to eat this.
Right.
But I think it kind of gets lost. But the sentiment I'm trying to prove is that this is not yucky food. You need to figure out how to embrace it. It's on you, not the food.
And a lot of chefs, I think we did talk about this. Oh, you said something in that Laura Hayes article. Many chefs will tell a food writer or food critic, you do not know how to eat this. It's not bad. You just don't know what the hell you're doing.
Sure.
So I love that. I love the humility of it as well. But just by saying like, hey, listen, I'm not getting this. You know what I mean? And teaching your children like, I don't know what's supposed to be. Everybody else is loving it, but this, it's okay to say, hey, I don't understand, because something's going on in the palate and it ain't clicking. So I dig that. That's your next book. That's your first book. Critiquing restaurants with the 4-year-old. So Gideon, list, talk to us. 100 very best. What are your thoughts?
Well, I want to rewind a little bit and maybe plug some of the previous shows that we've done. I think that lists that do come out inform people's dining choices in a big way. And a few months ago, when the Michelin stars came out, one of the things that we did was we had a conversation to really focus on the criteria that they use, because a lot of diners just use those Michelin star ratings as a proxy for their own sense of distinction, and I think what gets lost in the mix is an understanding of what the raters are even doing. That the rating system was originally devised to literally sell more tires. And that if you know what their criteria are and how they go about doing things, just blindly using 1, 2, and 3 stars as guides for your own sense of discernment, it doesn't add up anymore. And so I think that just understanding what's going on when someone creates a list, or even talking about what's going on if we don't understand. We've got the latest 100 very best restaurants list in front of us right now. I don't claim to understand the thinking behind it, but I think that having a conversation about what's reflected there, how it fits into the cultural context, as Steph just said, is really, really important. And I think that doing that can shake the authoritative sense that a reader might absorb by osmosis just reading it. I don't think that that's a healthy way to absorb any kind of information.
Yeah.
Especially when someone's telling you what's good and what's not, or what's best and what falls behind that.
Yeah. I know you're not the editor and you don't own magazines, but I want to, because I think part of the problem with chefs or restaurant folks that I talk to is we don't understand what's going on as far as like how media, like the business, what I believe. Mm-hmm. I just think it's like, I cook better than that person. My drinks are better. Our service is better. Tell the truth as we see it, right? We're extremely biased. But I think there's, I know we can't break it all down here, but what's the purpose from a magazine? Because you all had Northern Virginia magazine at 50, right?
We did 50 best.
So what's the purpose of a list like that?
Oh, well, I mean, a list sells magazines, right?
A list sells magazines.
A list sells magazines. And so a lot of you'll just, regardless of food, like a lot of lists will be on the cover, right? The 15 places to explore on a on a hike, or day trips, right? 24 day trips. The top doctor's best list. The top comfort foods. Right? Like, people are attracted to numbers, right? It helps organize, and your brain is somehow, you can figure things out in life if there's a list. And
we want to be led. We want to be. Our brain says something. We need direction.
Yes, right. And then we also are attached to stories. That's, we understand things, right? So then there's like a story around each number, each restaurant, each doctor, each day trip, each winery. And so a list sells, and then also everyone has to eat, right? And it's also the cultural currency right now. Are people talking about theater or movies? TV seems to be the other one that, right, is really big. Mm-hmm. Movies maybe not so much anymore, but what people talk about is food and restaurants, and where have you been? And it's just, it's our national pastime.
Okay.
And it really does feel, when I look at a list like the top 100 in Washington, D.C., it feels like, the beating pulse of an art scene,
Absolutely.
Totally.
Beating pulse of an art scene.
Yeah. And why do I love Reverie? Because they fucking push the envelope. Like it's like amazing stuff, and I always go home with like new ideas about what I can be doing in my kitchen. But I want to highlight something that you've just said, because you described the work of a food critic, but things like going there 3 times to really understand what you're doing, checking for consistency, conversing with the chef to understand the story of what they're doing, finding out the cultural context that it's placed within. My sense is from reading chats with critics that that's not what diners care about at all. So there's something very high-minded about the approach that you're taking that is like not meeting the market where it's at.
That's funny. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, because I mean, like I've since we've been doing this, I've become rather interested in not just what people like Tom Sietsema or Ann Limpert have to say, but what are they being asked? And frankly, what they're being asked is insipid most of the time.
What do you mean?
I mean, people
like, where's the best Instagram wall?
Things like that, and
where to get brunch for 15 people.
Yeah, here we are now. Entertain us, and it's like you're trying to be someone who's placing this within a cultural backdrop, and that's not what people seem to be interested in for the most part.
What do you think they want?
To stand out among their friends for picking the best place.
Yeah.
And showing everybody that they know where the best burger's at. I mean, it's kind of like that. Or there's stuff about my server treated me wrong, or things didn't come out right from the kitchen. It's like, what? and it's like, I feel kind of bashful saying this on the air, but it feels immature. Like,
yeah.
Like, we're all very immature, and we're bringing that immaturity to critics, and they have to deal with these stupid questions that we bring to them. It's like, what is your sense of that? Like, did you have much reader or audience interaction when you were critiquing?
Not nearly as much as I would have loved. But I think you're right. People feel service very personally, right? And a lot of people go to restaurants for that service element. I personally don't, even when I was a critic. I don't, that whole pampering thing, I don't know if it's just the way I grew up, and I just didn't need that level of service, and I get weird when it's too nice. I don't know. Like, I don't need that in life. But I know some people want that 4-star fine dining, and so they want that all the time. They want that, we're paying you, and they get on that high horse, right? Which is why tips are sometimes a problem.
Right.
Why people make a living off that. Because it's more about the person than the actual server.
So there's a lot of confusion
yeah.
that is part of the experience too, because of wanting to project a sense of discernment by going to the right places, the way that the servers do go a little over the top, and maybe that can occlude the experience of paying attention to, say, the food, and I don't know that people are there all the time to pay attention to the food, or I think that it's,
and that's true, for sure. It's about a host of things: the neighborhood, who you're with, what it looks like, what it feels like.
Definitely. I mean, it gives you I know. Well, how would you? Let me ask this: what would you want them paying attention to?
What would I want diners paying attention to?
Yeah. Well,
like
what
if
is?
I could wave my magic wand. And I want.
And some. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
And then subsequently, I don't know which would come first. Also, the media. What would you want them paying to? As a result, or whichever one comes first. Like.
I think a major caveat that I have to add before I say anything is that this comes as the result of a lot of curiosity and study, none of which I was bringing to the table, say, 18 months ago. But I think first and foremost, like, how are the restaurant staff interacting with each other? Because, these are high pressure environments, and I don't want to be paying money to a restaurant where I know that the staff is going home at the end of the day feeling a little smaller than when they came in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is about as far from people's minds as any consideration when they go to a restaurant. But if I could choose one thing, that would be it. I think food matters. I think, knowing what's on your plate, how it relates to, I had lunch with a client last month, and I remember just kind of being in awe when a plate of bronzino was served to me, because I was like, I just have to interrupt our conversation and say, hey, this is what's going on here. This is where this fish comes from. This is why I'm kind of in awe of the leafy greens here.
Who are you telling this to? Your guest?
This is a client
Okay.
that I'd taken out to lunch. The smear of sauce.
Wait, I'm
was
sorry,
pioneered.
you're the one doing this?
Yeah, me. It's totally nerdy, but
It's probably like, dude, I just
people
want to
know
eat
what
my
they
fish.
sign up for when they
Yeah.
work for me.
Yeah.
Or work with me, rather. I was talking about how the smear of sauce was something pioneered by Wiley Dufresne, so that's like the newest thing on the plate, really. That kind of thing.
The Wiley.
Smiley Dufresne.
Did he he gets credit for the smear? He started that?
Didn't he?
I have no
I don't
idea.
know, but that rest at WD
50, yeah.
I mean, that is like.
It's done, but
Yeah.
And
like
isn't it over that look over too?
I was just pointing
Yeah.
out where it came from.
Okay.
Listen, you say smear. Smear is a buzzword, man. We got it like, no.
And I swear,
Well-
Washingtonian in one of their sidebars just
Yeah,
said,
they
please
mentioned
get
that.
rid of it.
Yeah.
The
right?
smear?
Yep.
Which I am. I mean, we
You're-
all
it
talk
sounds
about
like
it.
you're over the
what
smear.
would some of you chefs
Swipe,
do
the swipe thing.
without
The
your
swipe,
swipe and smear? Who said this? Is this Ann
vomiting
said that?
fruit.
It's
Or it's-
presentations were over. The swipe.
Oh my! They just made 78 million white chefs really upset. Guys are losing their mind after reading that.
Just if it's the sauce, it should be delicious. I'm like, let's have more of it. What
Yo.
am I gonna do with this little dreg of,
Listen, I don't know about. I just swiped something the other day. That's why I'm laughing at myself too. I just smeared something the other day, but it's not necessarily my thing. But it is. It's old. It needs to die. So back to you.
Before we go on though, like
Yeah.
I'll cop to
We can have a whole show about swipes and smears.
swipes and
Yeah.
smears coming up.
And splatters.
I'll cop to a few days after having had that conversation with the client. I was at the playground that I usually go to, and a rabbi friend of mine was there, and I was saying, this is maybe just how I cultivate a sense of spirituality, just feeling like, knowing kind of the history of the food or where it's grown. I have a garden plot.
Yeah.
I love to garden.
Yeah.
And just being as knowledgeable about this stuff just makes me feel like I'm part of something bigger. It's temporal,
Yeah.
but it is bigger.
Yeah. Well, I want to circle back to what you said and what we like. And if you could wave a wand and diners and media could be focused on, like how staff, how they feel, how they interact. Like, is it a great place to work, for lack of a bit? That's kind of broad and general, but is it a good, happy place to work? Real cheesy. But the question is to Steph Ganze, who, by the way, is normally in disguise, or was for years in disguise.
didn't do things like this.
Didn't do things like this. She did one thing a couple years ago and came in big disguise. A little show called Shift Drink.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, it was very cool.
Was it a mask or?
It was
I
big
wore,
sunglasses,
like,
big hat,
It
scarf.
was ridiculous. It was too much.
It was. I mean, it did the job. And then I was with Kima and Aleka and Mark Jones. It was about the future is female. It was a great Shift Drink.
So long ago.
Yes, it was. What's media's responsibility in checking for that? That was our conversation when Michelin Guide came out, and it still remains like, where are we going with this? What does that look like? Can media ever check for, a place that is great to work? Like, can that, just like Tom is adding, or he added decibel levels, right? So, even
Awesome trademark, by the way.
what's that?
The decibel level thing. Like, I care about that.
Yeah.
I really care about that. If I can't, hear my fellow dining partner speak, let alone myself think, I don't want to be there.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I care about it. It just depends, right, on what I'm doing that night.
Sometimes you want the buzz.
Sometimes I do want the vibe. There's a big old hubbub
Sure.
a couple days ago about the decibel. I think Pete
Wells.
Yeah. But that's something that people ask for, right? And now it's a thing. So my question is, like, the restaurant industry says that we're moving in this direction where we care. I think it's a bunch of BS. So what does media have any responsibility in checking for that? Do you see the future of it? Like, are we trending that where you'll see that as an item on a reviewer's list?
Well, the thing is with decibels, that's like a fact, right?
It's
like menu price,
hard and fast.
right?
Yep.
This is a moderately expensive. This is expensive. Well, that's also, I guess,
Relative,
depending
yeah.
on right. But you can say entrees are $35, right, or whatever. Decibels are it's loud or soft. How do you treat your employees? I guess there could be benchmarks, right? But that's also, do they get paid time off? Is there childcare provided? Do they get health insurance? I mean, when Rose's Luxury was looking for a host, did you see that? That job, it was like health insurance, gym membership. I mean, it was a complete package of a beautiful suite of how humans should be treated, right?
Yeah.
And so that was definitely a story. That was a food feature. But I don't know if it goes into Rose's Luxury being number 20, right?
And I imagine it doesn't. I mean, I don't know, but I imagine
I don't
it doesn't.
know. I mean,
Yeah.
I think, right, when... trying to think how they treated the Isabella restaurants that the year that he got taken down in the Me Too movement. Was he on the list?
Nobody was reviewing them at that point, though, I don't think.
Well, but I mean, not reviewing a fresh, full review, but
Did they make the lists before
I don't
they got
know
shut
if,
down?
Yeah, were they still considered...
If I can
I don't
recall, I
know.
mean, he lost the award, the Grammy Award, in the midst of that.
Yeah, they took him out of it as being a nominee. They just... Right.
So that to me, the vibe was, we're just not touching it. Like, we're not going to talk about his spots.
Well, he doesn't deserve the recognition.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is interesting you bring that up, because he was, for all it, let's just say, if all of it's true, right, which we've talked about it countless times on this show, he was getting praise in the midst of being an asshole, right?
Before that.
Right. So...
because chefs are allowed to be, right? They can have that persona of being an asshole.
Yes, that is the culture that has been. But we're saying, and with that case, that's unacceptable, right? So just to sort of retrofit or to rewind that, he was getting pressed while running a horrible operation, while having a toxic culture. Let me say that.
Yeah.
Right? So he was getting good. This restaurant is great. I mean, Mike was, and again, that's not to knock media. It's just like, hey, how can you guys check for this? Like, what you said, benchmarks. I don't think personally that it will. Again, it's so subjective. And here's my big. I don't think, not to make this about me. There's so many restaurants that have horrible cultures that are at the top of these lists. The list would be like,
they would be thinned.
You know, and people are just scared of it. That's what I believe. And the media is like, you know, and I'm making a sweep.
Right, but there are, I mean, the other Washingtonian has a best places to work issue, right? And so there's no reason that a restaurant can't be. I think Great American Restaurants is on that greater list.
I think they are.
Right? And so there are restaurants when they're big like that, right? Okay. You can have systems in place, and you're a bigger company. You're not a small mom and pop just trying to make things work day to day, right? Mm-hmm. But at Hot Lola's in the Ballston Quarter,
Kevin Teen's spot,
they have a 4% wellness line. Yeah. Right, and so that goes to pay, I think, I don't know if it's only health insurance, but I think it is only directed to health insurance. That's just included in.
Is it optional?
Not the tip. No, it's there.
But you just have to, it has to, legally you have to have it as a line item.
Tax. Nope, no, and that's the thing. You don't have to have it. It's a conversation starter, I think, more than anything else.
It's just printed on the receipt.
He wants to let you know this is where this portion of your money is going.
And
I can dig that.
Emily's has that, and I believe Tame as well.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a new trend.
And so that's where, right, food writers are doing that side of like reporting on that sort of thing. And I don't know how it reflects within the review.
Yeah. Can I ask?
Can't be negative, right?
Right. Well, no, I guess not.
Right, like it must, when you're thinking of the restaurant and you know that they're doing great things for their employees, that's a positive.
You got to be the Grinch, if not, like you got to be a really evil person. So have you ever, as a critic, been in a restaurant and both sides of this, like experienced something and seen something like, wow, this has got to be an amazing place to work, or the flip of that is I just saw someone treat someone like that looks toxic or crazy. Have you ever experienced either? I'm putting you on the spot here.
There is one place that I was with. It was for breakfast, and screaming fights at like 10 o'clock in the morning. No one can handle that at 10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock in the morning.
Fighting, yeah, and there was a whole host of reasons why we left, but one of them was because it was just so ugly in there, and so we went somewhere else for breakfast.
You could hear it, or you?
Yeah, it was like basically out in the open. We were the only people there, and it was just kind of.
Wow.
Yeah, I think someone was slamming of things and.
And had you? What was it? You're
that
not going back.
It's actually out of business now.
It's gone.
Yeah.
And any on the flip that come to mind, like, me, when I've seen, my perspective is different, obviously, but
you probably notice things that I still don't.
Right. Just people helping each other when they don't have to, or you see people leave off the line or do. I'm trying to think. I can't even. I'm asking you a question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm sure, but
we probably don't even.
The thing is, good service also feels invisible in a way and seamless. Right, so maybe I don't notice that the servers are helping each other because I'm being taken care of, and so I don't have to notice it, and that's kind of the luxury of being the guest, right? All I know is my water got refilled, and I don't know how they made it work.
Yeah.
I don't have to know how they made it work,
right?
In a way, I just want to be taken care of.
Got you.
And I think that gets to the intersection of different points of focus, like if you're a diner. You asked me what I think people should pay attention to. I don't think people want to pay attention to the things I listed, like how are people treating each other, because they just want to be treated nicely by a server like that. And so if it is good, it is invisible. And so it takes a certain dedication to, peek behind the curtain.
I think the customers or consumers or people have to, to have this sort of I don't care what's going on behind the scenes attitude is irresponsible. It's it further we push people in these like the servant culture. We see them as functions to get us our shit, as opposed to like just people doing their these are human beings, right? Just
not
media,
pleasure vending machines,
right?
Yeah.
We chefs talk about writers and critics like they're not human beings that don't have a boss, sales goals to meet, husband, wife, kids, deadlines. So when you dehumanize in that sense, like you just say, like, get me my stars or get me my water, and you should care. Like I would care. I care if there's a toxic workplace at Washington Post, or if that came out of an Eater or something like that. That would matter to me as far as where we spent our dollars, advertising dollars, or what we actually read and supported. So people saying that, you should care. I'm to challenge any customer. You gotta care, because these are not just people to come bring you your shit and take pictures of you so you can put on Instagram. These are human beings. And the fact that we don't care, here's what happens. This is the last thing I'll say. It keeps labor and food really cheap, and we don't understand the cost to get that plate to you. The cost is human beings, a lot of human beings, from the farm all the way to your plate, that bring that to you. And the fact that if you understood that, maybe you would pay a couple bucks more for your burger or your chicken, whatever it is. So we keep that blind up. I think it keeps pushing that cost down. And I love what Kevin is doing, or that group with the 4%. Like, hey, listen, here's what we need. She needs to take off sometimes, or he needs, a sick day like a normal human being. 4% really helps towards that. And people are like more aware. Okay, I'll pay 4%. as opposed
Especially
to.
when it's a delicious chicken sandwich.
Listen,
My God.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to take that to the car. I didn't get it the other day, but I thought I was going to. Have you had it?
No.
Oh my goodness. It didn't make it to up those steps. I was like, let me take one bite.
Nope.
Okay.
Not gonna
That
happen.
hot Lola sandwich.
Yes.
is-
Yeah.
12 bites. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a little break, and then in the second hour, we're going to come back and talk to Stephanie Ganze about her new and current work at Cookology, where she is the
Yay.
Director of Talent and Culture, leading up the squad there. You got some amazing classes coming up with a few of my friends. I know Joe Yonan he wrote a book on beans.
Cool beans.
David Guas is the man he does New Orleans food. He's at Bayou Bakery.
Uh-huh.
And Derek Brown, who is just amazing.
Unparalleled.
Yes, he's doing a class there on zero proof cocktails.
And he's doing a classic cocktail from Columbia Room Getaway, spirited and spirit free.
Listen, the guy's a genius. He knows I love him. And you also have one I want to talk about with Willona Sloan, which is like cooking and eating, but writing.
Yeah, a writing class with food.
I wonder who pitched that idea. So we're going to come on back in the second hour and talk all about Cookology. Join us.